Hello, and welcome to this edition of the PurpleJournal podcast.
Can you spell that?
MEHHH, sad face emoji.
Okay, that's what I thought.
I am your host, Joe Johnson, owner of PurplePTSD.com and VikingsTerritory.com. I'm here with Mr. Joe Oberle.
Yes, that's me. Me, the spelling Nazi. That's me.
I love the energy tonight. It's just... Ugh. Joe writes for Purple PTSD, Vikings Territory, and the Sports Post. Luke Braun is also here. He writes for Purple PTSD, Vikings Territory. He's the co-host of the Pocket Protectors podcast on the Climbing the Pocket Network. I should also mention that our show is brought to you by two sponsors this week, Pro Football Focus and Revitalite.
Nice.
Revitalite is kind of a magic concoction that if you drink it while you're drinking alcohol or afterwards, it'll abate your hangover. So it's in a lot of liquor stores, and we're planning on making Monday mornings a lot easier for a lot of our listeners. So pick that up next time you go shopping. But yeah, we had a week off last week, which was probably good because the Vikings went, 0 for 12 on third down, and the game was just... would have been a high point. And before we get into the Seahawks game, I think we should kind of cover some of the news that either happened around the time that we were going to do the show last week, or that has happened up a couple hours ago.
I have a question for you guys based
Sure.
on some news today. Would you rather take financial advice from Carl Nassib or Michael Kendricks?
I need a little background. What happened?
If
Eric
you
Kendricks'
haven't been
brother?
watching Carl... Yeah, have you not heard of what happened with Michael Kendricks literally like 2 hours before we started recording?
No.
Oh my God. So on Hard Knocks, Carl Nassib gave a very viral financial advice talk with very, very bad financial advice, saying that if you put your money in a bank, it will grow 10%. One, putting your money in a bank does not make it grow.
No.
Really any significant amount at all. Two, 10% is ridiculous. If you are making 10% on your money, you're probably breaking laws. Speaking of breaking laws,
that's Bernie Madoff level growth.
Speaking of, Michael Kendricks is under investigation for insider trading, and the Browns just released him.
I did see that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it was him, but I saw that they said insider trading. That does not really surprise me. Just based on the conversation we had when Chris Kluge was on the show about some of the shiesty stuff that happens, like at the rookie symposium with all like the business deals, and a lot of these guys, I think they get in really over their head in regards to.
Oh, insider trading. Kendrick should have been leading that seminar, for crying out loud. That's better information than Nassib was given.
Or
apparently.
Chris Carter
So,
with his fall guy.
It's just that whole... It's hilarious. Sorry, I wanted to bring that up because it is so funny, and I'm enjoying all the very good Twitter right now.
So is he...
Does that affect I'm sorry, George. Does that affect his brother in any way? I mean, not that his brother's involved in that, but...
I don't think so. It probably makes him sad because his brother is facing like 8 to 12 months in jail.
I was going to say, so is it that legit of a crime? Like, what? It doesn't seem... You don't hear about a lot of white-collar crime coming out of the NFL, even today with what happened with Caleb Jones. So I guess I'm surprised that a player of his
Phil Mickelson
stature
answer questions on it a few years ago.
Martha Stewart?
No,
I think there's a lot of that going on. It's just hard to catch. But for a second I got excited and thought maybe they'll be able to pick him up now, but it looks like he's probably going to be playing football in the yard for a while.
You could pick up the rights to him, and then, I don't know, Martha Stewart only did like 5 months.
Yeah.
You pick up the rights to him, and then when he comes out of prison and the NFL will probably suspend him for some level of time, meaning he wouldn't count against the roster.
That's a new hashtag.
You can try it.
Go get him. But what about Caleb Jones? Like, what is...
He's done.
What is the deal? Like, is there? All I saw was like theft and domestic assault, and he's in Dakota County jail. But I don't know, like, if there's any other.
He also like messed with a 911 call, which is a misdemeanor.
Yes.
Oh no.
So he must have got into some kind of crazy trouble situation that led to all those charges. I'm sure more details will come out, but that TV suspension is bad. And he kind of already needed a big game against Tennessee to make the roster in the first place. So I don't think that something pretty intense would have to happen for him to remain a part of the Vikings, which is a bummer. He was looking like he might have, there might have been something to mold there.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah.
But like you said,
gone so long without an arrest.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
But like you said, Luke, I mean, we're gonna get into this later, but like, I was listening to PA earlier on the radio, and they were trying to figure out the 53-man roster, which I know is something you kind of dabbled with this offseason, Luke. And and again, we're gonna get into this later, but it's crazy, and it's gotten a little crazier this past week. We didn't have a chance to talk about the Iloka thing or the trade for Brett Jones. Starting with Iloka, what are your guys' thoughts on that in regards to his fit with the team? Obviously, he's familiar with Zimmer's system a little bit, and the talk about this maybe hybrid linebacker stuff that maybe could help a little bit with the 53-man roster is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, it sounds good. I like someone that can come in, knows the system, wants to be with Zimmer, and is already drinking the Kool-Aid as he's walking in the door. And I don't know much about, other than hearing that he got some snaps as kind of some hybrid, defensive back and a linebacker, and I think that's exciting because it gives. If it's doable, if it works, it kind of gives them some flexibility too, and ways for Zimmer to hide more stuff and confuse quarterbacks, and so I'm all for it. I'd like to see how it pans out, and it strengthens the safety unit. So
yeah, it's like obviously a good move. I don't think there's anybody out there who's like, we shouldn't have picked him up because we paid the vet minimum for him, and after you account for like the top 51, and he's probably pushing a similarly expensive player out of the top 51. It's going to cost the team like $250,000, which is nothing in terms of the cap.
And it didn't cost a draft pick or anything, so that's kind of nice.
Right. So it's this costless, and you've got an inarguably starting quality safety that was only released because the Bengals were in a tough cap situation. They were paying him $6 million, and they had drafted a safety that was playing way better than they expected to play, so they went with the save money route. And it sounds like his kind of first thought was to come to Minnesota, and he didn't really even take the time to look anywhere else, which is really, really cool. And
yeah, I was going to actually ask you that, just as an aside, like the fact that the Vikings have suddenly turned into a team where guys will take a vet minimum, maybe that, or the news that Kirk Cousins, which we knew, but it came out, I think the New York Post, that he turned down like $90 million from the Jets.
It was in a documentary on the Vikings website about his journey to Minnesota, which is really an awesome documentary. Everybody should watch it,
myself included. But no, it's a different. I remember like the TJ Houshmandzadeh days where I was so mad that he didn't come here that I like yelled at him on Twitter.
Michael Johnson, what's that offensive lineman from Cincinnati they were trying to get a couple years ago, Clint Bowles or something like that.
Oh yeah, Mike Iapati.
Yeah. Yep.
There's a number of them and now maybe people are looking this way. It still isn't happening for the Timberwolves, but at least it's starting to happen.
That's exactly what popped in my head. They're like the anti-Timberwolves now. But yeah, Luke, did you have any thoughts like on maybe his like how that hybrid situation will work, how that might work with Anthony Barr maybe rushing the passer more too?
Yeah, you might be able to get like in passing downs, you could kind of have Anthony Barr be rushing the passer, but most of the situations where Barr rushes it's just a blitz. They haven't like lined him up instead of Daniil Hunter at edge or anything like that. But they, I guess, had talked a little bit about experimenting with like 3 safety looks or something like that. I'm not sure if that's particularly necessary unless, you have like some obvious passing situation and you're in like a dime package, which would be 6 defensive backs, and maybe you want to put him on the field instead of a 4th cornerback. So I'm not sure how that'll shake out. It'll be really interesting to watch, but I think ultimately he makes the safety room that much more crowded. It means we have 5 extremely rosterable safeties in Smith, Sendejo, Aloka, Harris, and Curse. I think are all very valuable pieces. Even Curse, just because he's so good on special teams, and you kind of see that like he's never on the field in those bad special teams plays, and he's really, really important to that. So I think that is a really interesting battle all of a sudden, and you might even see them keep 5 safeties and maybe 1 less linebacker or something like that.
Or I've seen a lot of talk about, and PA said this on his show today, actually, that he doesn't think that the Vikings are done adding offensive linemen, and that the Vikings might make a trade of a good player on
I
defense.
thought about that. Like, if you traded a defensive back, somebody like, I guess, Sendejo or like a Mackenzie Alexander even, I think both of those pieces are valuable enough to, like, require a starter in return, or, a depth piece and a good draft pick or something like that. I think both of those are valuable players that you wouldn't just, like, unload for a conditional 6th or something like that. They would get you something back. Or you could trade somebody like, Jaron Curse or something like that, or even, like, trade somebody like Holton Hill for a 6th or a conditional, 2020 draft pick or something like that. And that could also be how that goes, even though I think what PA said was like a starting caliber offensive lineman.
Yeah.
But they just got a starting caliber offensive lineman for a 7th round pick. So I don't know, maybe value's all screwy.
Yeah, I think he said he thinks he'll add more than one person too, so that was kind of interesting just based on his I don't know how wacky his takes are, to be honest.
Well, if that's the truth, they're going to start, they're not too happy with what they got. Then, I mean, I know that the line has been depleted with injury and they need some depth, but boy, that means some of these younger guys are not panning out if they're going to get yet more than one quality lineman in here.
This late?
Yeah, that really says a lot. And that means they're all in for this year.
It really does, and I mean, it could also mean, I don't know, like they figure, like Luke said with Holton Hill, if they can get something for him as opposed to putting him on, trying to get him on the practice squad, which won't happen. Maybe they figure they'll cut their losses and get something instead of nothing.
It might be like, they've kept 4 safeties, I think, for the last like however many years, right? So
Yeah.
if you're like, oh, we really don't want to cut Anthony Harris, maybe we can trade Anthony Harris and try to get something for him because he's worth that rather than just letting him walk.
Yeah.
Because, that, and if you say we're to cut Anthony Harris, he would get picked up immediately, and he could honestly push some teams. He could push some starters.
He's had, 2 interceptions in the preseason?
And a bunch of run stops. I actually don't know exactly what his stats are in the preseason, but he's played really well. So that could be something where, like, what do you get back for Anthony Harris in terms of a lineman? Probably like a Tom Compton level guy, somebody who you probably wouldn't want starting but can fill out your roster. So that might be what they're talking about, or it might be something crazy, like trade Sendejo for like a premier guard or something like that.
Who's going to give up, starting linemen in this league? I just, you're going to have to really drop somebody decent to get somebody like that.
Or somebody who needs a defensive back really bad, like the Chargers,
Perhaps, but I just they've got to have the depth themselves, because that's to get a start.
That's why everyone keeps talking about Dallas, I think, because they obviously have a good offensive line. But speaking of that, we kind of glossed over.
They've got injuries, Joe, and they're in their offensive.
Yeah, they lost a bunch.
Yeah, so.
What do you guys think about Brett Jones? He's a Canadian.
I keep calling him Burt Jones.
Yeah.
But then I'm older than you guys, so that's what happens.
It's better than Tom Jones.
Yes.
Take it away, Joe. I'm going to pull up his PFF.
Ooh.
I like the move. Big time. It didn't cost you much.
What did they give up for him again?
A 7th
rounder. I mean,
Kirk Cousins?
Like Luke pointed out at one point, 50% of 7th rounders make the team. So who would not give that up for
like that?
For a potential starting offensive guard? That's an upgrade of what you've already got. I mean, that's huge. And for something else, it's depth. I mean, you're taking people at that position in a draft for backup. So I mean, if he's that, he's already got experience. He has started. He's got position
He's still
versatility.
relatively young too, I think.
Yes, he's young. He's got position versatility. I mean, it was a great move. I'm very excited by it. I hope it pans out. I hope we see a little bit of him, but I don't think we'll see a lot because they'll get him. I think they're counting on him. Obviously, if they're going to be doing more moves, they're still looking. So they're obviously counting on him for something. So you may see him a little bit of him, but probably not too much.
Yeah, I brought up Zane Beadles a lot this offseason and in articles and in fever dreams where I woke up screaming, Zane Beadles. But yeah, I think it's a similar move just because, like you said, the versatility. So, you guys know how I've been about the offensive line, and I don't think like this. Obviously, like Cousins got hit a few times in the Seahawks game.
Yep.
The run game was not really doing much, but it seemed like, and we'll talk about this, but the Seahawks were blitzing on like every down in like the first quarter and a half.
Previous week he got hit on a naked boot as well, so he's taken a few shots already.
Yeah, those naked boots haven't worked, it seems like.
The protections on them have been really wrong, which I don't know who is in charge of that. It could be Cousins, it could be Cornelius Edison. But
another plug.
Well,
yeah.
DiFilippo blamed himself for that. The first game, the two games with the Jaguars when he got drilled, he said that was a bad call on his part. He wanted that back. So I think they played it right on that one but they never even looked that way towards him.
Right, and part of so the center's job on most teams is to point. You'll see them pointing every snap, and they're pointing at who they think the Mike linebacker is. And then everybody else kind of figures out who they're supposed to block from there or where they're supposed to block from there.
Correct.
And if you do that incorrectly, which somebody who's inexperienced like Cornelius Edison would very likely do, you would have things like totally unblocked people. We saw a sack in the Seattle game like that where Reef and Compton double-teamed someone, and then the defensive tackle, or maybe it was a linebacker, shot up completely unblocked. That is clearly not what the play design was supposed to do. And that's either on the center, or sometimes you could say that's on the quarterback who should have, seen what was going to happen and diagnosed it and changed the protection call if that's their responsibility, which varies team to team. And I don't know how the Vikings work from that, but I think it's probably most likely the center's fault when that kind of thing happens, which is why center is more important than, a lot of people will think centers aren't as important because they're often part of double teams, and that makes it, not as important that they're good. But when you don't have a center who can call the right protections, it can lead to a lot of unblocked, immediately the play is over type sacks.
Yeah, I heard Matt Burke talking about it on the air today. Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, you got to have somebody that either goes to Harvard like Matt Burke or Notre Dame like John Sullivan to call those protections. But it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
did you? Yeah, I was going to ask you. You've looked that up, Luke?
Yeah, I've got Brett Jones stuff. So in terms of pass blocking efficiency, which is basically just how many pressures per snap you allowed, and sacks hurt you a little bit more than pressures. He's actually dead tied with Zach Martin and Travis Frederick, two of the premier Dallas interior linemen.
Holy shit.
So in terms of production, he was as good as those two. In terms of grade, I think he ranks amongst all interior linemen, so that's guards and centers, he ranks 17th in the entire league, which is pretty gosh darn good considering.
Yep. And he's a better pass blocker than run blocker.
Yes, he is. He has struggled a lot throughout his whole career as a run blocker. Nick Olson, I think he turned this into an article at Vikings territory, and he did a little bit of film review on that. And he's an excellent pass blocker, and has been for his whole career. And he just has a little bit of trouble at the second level. I did a piece about Cornelius Edison to the same effect, and found kind of the same problems, except Cornelius Edison's problems are way more exaggerated. And his successes in pass blocking, we just have a much smaller sample of him doing that.
Exaggerated how?
He gets completely lost.
Okay.
And doesn't find his guy. He cannot, he'll get out of there and then struggle to actually find, identify, and go get the guy. You can see him hesitating and thinking. Whereas Brett Jones will get out there, hit the right guy, but he just doesn't quite take the right angle, or he doesn't quite engage quite properly, and then the linebacker can get around him more easily, and it's a much more minor problem. Whereas Cornelius Edison, there's a couple of hilarious screens where he just runs out and doesn't find who he's supposed to block, and then like runs off screen.
So do you see, like, how do you see him impacting the line? Like, where? And I know this seems kind of like Joe, you said it might mean they're not happy with some of the guys, like the depth guys or the younger guys. But if he's grading that good, wouldn't he? Don't you think end up starting? And then how would that change the line?
He should start right away.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of guard or center.
And then I was wondering about the guard or the center thing. And I wasn't sure, Joe, like what you've heard about Elfline.
Boy, they're so close-mouthed on this. Every day they're being asked on it, and every day he says he'll play when he's ready. When the doctors say, it's looking like we're not going to see him on the first week of the season. And if you're not going to see him the first week, and you get by without him, you're not going to bring him back till he's absolutely ready. I mean, he had the 2 surgeries. The second one, I believe, was the shoulder, and it's really held him back. He's such an important part of the offensive line. You don't want to bring him back sooner and then screw him up for the rest of the season. So I think if they can find somebody that they can limp along with for maybe, I would say at this point, maybe 2-3 weeks yet, and then they're going to do that and then bring him in, So you could see, wouldn't you think that they're going to, given that, if that's an accurate read, do you think that they're going to put Jones in there and try to work him in at center?
Especially considering what Luke just said about some of those breakdowns on the line with Cousins getting hit. I mean, obviously, it's an admission that something isn't going the way they want it to. I think beyond the Elfline thing.
I think it's definitely we're not happy with Cornelius Edison. It could be we're not happy with Tom Compton, but they still appear to be higher on him than most of the rest of us are.
And what have you guys thought about Collins moving to guard?
He doesn't look rosterable. He has been a catastrophe in the preseason.
That's what I thought. And a
lot
of people were really excited
pressures.
About it.
Luke, don't sugarcoat it. Tell us how you really feel, for crying.
He's given up 7 pressures, and I don't know how many snaps. I can look that up real fast, but
on what?
It's in the preseason.
I was gonna say no. You're supposed to say Pro Football Focus.
Oh yeah, on Pro Football. I'm looking up his back blocking efficiency on ProFootballFocus.com.
Hey, I'm drinking some Revitolite right now. I'm like PA getting all misty-eyed about Continental Diamond.
Yeah, in 104 snaps, he's given up 7 pressures, which is catastrophic. That's like TJ Clemmings 2016 would be below average for him.
What, like 5%?
And that guard, which is so bad.
Yeah.
What year was Clemmings on the team? Did you say 2016?
Yeah, the really bad Clemmings year.
Well, that means that these guys have seen it, so he is gonzo. You don't want that.
Yeah, that I think, I don't know, it's the only reason he would make the team is just for lack of anybody else. Like, you'd have to, like, roster Caleb Johnson over him, which I would do if I were them, but maybe they won't just because of familiarity.
Well, maybe PA's right. Maybe they are going to trade for another guy. I hope they, sign. You figure it's got to come out of the defensive backfield. Is their most? It's suddenly their most deep unit, wouldn't you say? That someone like Mackenzie Alexander.
I would be, as the person who has kind of been a little angry about all the investments in the corners in the draft as opposed to the offensive line, especially this past draft. That would abate a lot of my anger if they did that.
Waynes. They could trade Wayne.
Oh no, that can't happen.
Trade Waynes because he's got his contract's coming up, and then they don't have to.
Well, everyone was saying it comes down to him and Sheldon Richardson next year, but it seems like Richardson was getting outclassed against his old team. Also,
I think if you did trade Waynes, he would demand quite a bit for an outside corner who is entering, extension time and can be like a foundational piece. And I think he's played well enough where, a team that has any reasonable confidence in their coaching staff can probably feel pretty good about him as a foundational piece. if you're going to trade that and put that on the block, you are getting a king's ransom back.
Luke, they could trade him to the Chargers, like you said. They needed one. He could be reunited with his old buddy Melvin Gordon. They were classmates at.
There you go. Yeah, they would have to get you would definitely get a starting quality player back.
Yeah.
Do you really think that's even a possibility? Just
we're trying to get.
I know. My heart is beating like twice as fast as usual. I feel like Wayne's is, and I'm not saying you guys do this, but I feel like some people are still focused on like that preseason where he got 1 million flags.
The Hall of Fame game in his rookie.
Yeah. I don't think I'll never forget the Saturday night scrimmage last year in Mankato the last night, and all the writers were like kind of shit talking Wayne's, like boo and like stuff like that, like oh, Wayne sucks. I'm like, what are you guys doing? But
he knows what he's doing. He's a very valuable piece of this defense. There's no two ways about it.
And with like Hughes being hurt, I mean you don't know what you're getting. It just would seem like such a drop down in what they've built. But yeah, it's that's why I called it the meh episode, just because I feel like, Joe, you summed it up really well. With your recap of the Seahawks game, basically saying there's a lot of work to do. And I felt like, while I think some of the players on the offense during the interviews on TV kind of sugarcoated it and said, like, this is the offense, we move the ball, and they kind of blamed Carlson for not putting points on the board, but it really felt disjointed. Like, the play that stood out to me the most was when Cousins overthrew Thielen by like 10 yards when he was wide open.
They actually, PFF actually credited that play to Cornelius Edison because he gave up too much ground and Cousins couldn't step into that throw, so he sailed it.
Okay, because
actually insider info that it was indeed that play, the only pressure Cornelius Edison has given up all preseason.
Yeah, so no, it just in general the game felt disjointed, and like I wish the preseason was a few weeks longer, since the roster the beginning of the season is kind of a gauntlet.
You're obviously not an owner in the NFL then. You're part of the NFL who wants less preseason games.
Well, I mean, as a fan, I'd rather have 2, but at the same time, with how the team looks, I'd rather have 16, especially if we're getting new offensive linemen. I just don't, I think back when we got Favre and we played the Browns the first week, and he had 100 yards passing, and it took him a few weeks, I think, till the San Francisco game to kind of get his mojo back. I feel like not super confident about us playing the 49ers and having all this stuff to fix.
Favre didn't go to camp, and these guys are tired of this crud, and so I'm tired of watching it, to be perfectly honest with you. And they could use some more time to gel with their offensive line and just their starting unit, their quarterback, and get him some more time. But you got to start playing the games, or the Vikings aren't going to have anybody left to play in those games where they're dropping. So 6 2 weeks ago, 4 last week. It's like, my goodness. Play the games.
So
I think right now Kirk Cousins is still kind of processing slowly, and that is entirely understandable. He's learning a new offense. Mm-hmm. What Sam Bradford did in 2016 it was such an outlier, and I think we're a little spoiled about it. It's like gonna take a little bit to get off the ground and get the timing perfect. He was late on a couple throws in the Jags game, late on a couple throws in the Seahawks game. That's okay. That's not a reason to panic. It'll pull itself together, and we kind of have, it. As long as we aren't in a spot where like things are going catastrophically wrong, and we're throwing interceptions and stuff, which doesn't appear to be the cause of the problems. It's just certain plays aren't quite hitting on all cylinders, and you're seeing drops or slightly inaccurate throws.
Which is like not Cousins' deal typically, right? So. I mean, isn't he
He usually can process things quickly. It's just he's still on a brand new offense, and he's in his first game experience with that. Yeah, it's going to be a little shaky.
And he didn't get a nap before the game on Friday.
That's right.
And he said he liked St. Paul, which killed me a little bit inside as a lifelong Minneapolitan. But segueing to the Seahawks game.
Now.
What?
He must be dead to you now.
No, big time. I burned his jersey on the border on 280. It wasn't a big talker. I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Was Dalvin Cook's return, quote unquote. We talked about this off air a little bit, but I think he had 2 runs for 0 yards. Yeah, he did pick up that first down, if I remember correctly. But I know that Lieber.
Vikings first down.
Ooh, I know Lieber on TV said he wasn't too happy with the lack of Dalvin Cook, of what we got to see from him, and I thought, Luke, your take was funny and perfect.
Well, yeah. Because what did Lieber say? He was like, we didn't get a look at him.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you're not trying. You know how good Dalvin Cook is, pretty much, right? Like, you're not evaluating him. He's your starter for sure. But I do agree in a sense that, like, you didn't really get him knocked around quite enough to get, like, acclimated to actual contact. And that's not necessarily like some machismo, you got to get a couple bruises in you first, and then you can really play. No, it's more that, at game speed, evading tackles in game speed is kind of a more instinctual thing than something that you can really hone in drills. So not getting as much work in that and warm up in terms of that skill in the preseason might cause Dalvin Cook to get off to a bit of a slower start.
Well, the thing is, too, and you got to think of it from Zimmer's standpoint, he got rocked a couple times on 2 of those plays, that he carried the ball. He got hit pretty good going into the middle of the line. And maybe he's looking at that line who didn't open up jack or squat for him.
That is true.
And saying, I do not want my my star player here out here exposed to this right now. Not when I'm going to trade for a new lineman this week and look at for more down the road. So, I think it was wise to get him out of there. I in fact said that right after. He said, "Okay, I've seen enough. Get him out of there."
And it seemed like there were like Diggs got lit up on that crossing route, and it just felt like it was. I thought it was odd that like Russell Wilson and company were out there in the third quarter, but our starters weren't, just based on kind of how the first half went. But it seemed like that might have been the philosophy, especially with Cousins taking those hits. It's, why risk it? Especially, like you said, if they're going to make changes anyway.
I don't think, we never heard anything about Diggs because Zimmer doesn't have to report anything till the first week of the season. But he came back. What? Pardon me?
He came back like 3 plays later, but I was kind of worried about that again, watching it today.
He did. I didn't notice that because I'm thinking I didn't see him go through the concussion protocol, but how he wasn't forced to go through it is beyond me because he got drilled. He didn't see it coming,
and he got up like kind of not slow, but you could tell it hurt him a little bit.
Yeah, he definitely got rocked. I will say that was probably more Diggs' fault, and I don't say that because it's my opinion. I say that because a lot of smart people on Twitter, from PFF people to Reef to other people who break down film on Twitter, all said like that Diggs probably should have sat down on a crosser like that on I think it was a mesh concept. You're supposed to sit down in the hole in the zone. And Diggs didn't do that, and Kirk Cousins threw it behind him, which was the correct throw, and Diggs should have sat into that. Okay. So him getting rocked was not like a quote-unquote hospital ball like some people were saying.
Yeah.
That was probably more on Diggs than it was on Cousins.
I would agree with that. He walked right into it. And the guy didn't really maliciously hit him. He just, he just hit him. And hit
it was a perfect legal hit.
And this was going to be a talker last week, and we don't really need to get into it because it seemed to fade after this batch of games, but I was at least pleased to see that they didn't throw a flag on that just based on all the brouhaha with the new tackle rule. And I know there was that roughing the passer that somehow drew a fine for like $20,000 too. That it was just kind of people were like, this isn't going to be football anymore.
Antoine Williams, I believe. Yeah.
So, besides... you brought this up, and I didn't put it in the agenda, Luke, but it seems like, I'm just interested in what you guys' thoughts are on some of the offensive scheming that you've seen, like with the naked bootlegs. It seems to be a lot of passes, like across the middle, slot passes, quick passes. I haven't, there wasn't as much so far, like a lot of deep ball stuff that I think people expected. I mean, they've picked up 20 yards, but they haven't actually like taken that many shots down the field. I'm just wondering, in wide receiver screens, I think Thielen had his first catch and had that great run after that. Like, what your take is so far on this offense? Like, what you think maybe they'll tweak when it's not the preseason, like things they might be hiding, or like it's what your general assessment is. Luke first, since I know you kind of looked into his time in Cleveland and stuff he did there. DeFilippo, I mean.
I mean, yeah, I think we've continued to see a little bit of RPO stuff. I haven't paid that much attention, but there were some that I guess looked like it. I could be totally wrong about that, though.
I haven't seen. Am I wrong that they're not doing a lot of play action, even though that's like supposed to be a huge thing?
They've done some.
And keep in mind that this is more of what are the basic foundational principles we want to drill rather than what are we doing. We didn't game plan for the Seahawks like the Seahawks had game planned for
us.
For us.
Yeah.
Which and that's there's like definitely pros and cons to doing that, right? If you game plan, especially if you game plan for a team you're going to play in the regular season, you then get tape of them going against what what your plan was. You get to kind of do a trial run of that plan, and then when it comes to time for that game, you can go look back at this tape and see how it worked. Or you can just drill the concepts that you're trying to drill and, get more ready for the season. It's definitely a coach's decision. But, a lot of zone pass blocking, which they were drilling as well, which is, getting guys instead of just getting back and saying, okay, I'm just not going to let this defensive end get past me. It's getting to a spot and then saying, I'm not letting anyone get past this spot. It makes it easier to pass off stunts. And I think in terms of the offensive line watching that I did from Cornelius Edison to Brian O'Neill, they've done pretty well against stunts, and that matters. There are some plays that it's really just hard to tell because, the protection got screwed up and it was an immediate sack. And there are some plays where, Trevor Siemian messed it up or somebody else, messed up and kind of didn't allow you to see it. But there's been a lot of horizontal stretch concepts, which I definitely like, especially against zone defenses. And all that means is, you have guys running side to side from one person's zone to the next person's zone, and passing that off is really, really difficult. Eventually there is a window that you can hit. And that's why, you hear quarterbacks like, quote unquote, picking apart the zone. Throwing into that window is kind of what broadcasters mean when they say that. Horizontal stretch concepts kind of give you a bunch of those types of opportunities, and essentially put defenders in a place where they have to choose, okay, do I let this guy come into my zone or do I let this guy run away from me? Is this guy going to be open or is that guy going to be open? And I just have to kind of pick my poison. That's kind of where we've had the most success. A lot of mesh too, which is really nice. The Vikings had a ton of success with mesh last year.
I think Luke said when he started this out that he didn't really pay much attention to it. So just let me say that I then therefore did a really deep dive on this, Joe, since you went first. But I'm not giving up my take because this is the preseason and we keep that close inside. Ooh. We're not saying that now, so I'm just gonna let you sit on. No, I'm kidding. Okay, next question.
What'd you guys?
I think that's what they're doing. I don't think the Vikings are showing anything, and they don't have to. They went to the NFC Championship game last year, so they're gonna. You'll see some new wrinkles. You'll see more play action. There has been some, and it's some of it's worked, and Cousins does look good in it. But they're not gonna do it all over the map, I don't think, because they want to keep some of that in.
So it did seem like Luke said, like the Seahawks had a game plan. They literally blitzed like the first at least like first 8 plays. And I know that Shamar Stephen and Tom Johnson are on their defensive line. There's familiarity there. Obviously, we picked up Sheldon Richardson this offseason. I wanted your guys' thoughts on. There were a couple plays, I think there were run plays where he got sucked into the backfield and they took advantage of it. And one of them was that running the first touchdown. And PA kind of mentioned it twice. I was just interested in not that I'm saying like look at like, oh no. But I was just interested in your guys' take on what he's been doing.
I think anytime something like that gets brought up on the broadcast, now everybody thinks that like that makes everybody really overestimate how important it is. So it was like 3 run plays where Richardson, they're called trap plays, and what a trap play is you kind of have the lineman block differently to allow the defensive tackle, in this case Sheldon Richardson, to freely come into the backfield, and then you have like a pulling guard or a tight end or somebody knock them off balance, and it makes it easier to block that person because you get to come at them from the side, or you get to come at them from a weird angle, and their momentum is essentially carrying them out of the play, and that's what a trap play is. So they're designed to kind of take advantage of it, or to make it easier to block a good defensive lineman. This is a really good strategy for playing against the Rams. It's a good way to make sure that Aaron Donald doesn't ruin your life. And that's kind of what they did, and they know that Sheldon Richardson is very tenacious, and they know that he is prone to over pursuit, so he'll fall right into that. And that's what they did, and it worked a couple times. I think on trap plays, though, the person that the play is designed to target has a smaller responsibility than like the linebackers should adjust their gaps and like figure out, read and diagnose that that's happening, and attack the play accordingly. And I think on both offense and defense, a lot of the problems that we've seen in the preseason have just been like players not really actively reading or trying to adjust or doing any of that. They're just kind of executing their assignments, which I don't know if that's a coaching thing, and they're just saying, no, we just want to drill these concepts and just do your assignment, and we're not going to worry about reading live yet till we're in a real game, or if they're just kind of sleepwalking through it because whatever, it's the preseason. But I think that's the root of a lot of those problems is coming from just like players not really being willing to like adjust on the fly in the preseason.
When you hear Zimmer talk about it, he kind of describes just what you just said, Luke, that they're drilling in concepts, they're drilling in places that you're supposed to be in the right at a right and certain time, and I go back to what Cousins talked about this defense and how difficult it is when he goes up to a line and makes a check, and all of a sudden the entire defense shifts to the change that he made. He says it makes it very difficult. They've been playing together so long that they know each other. They all know what to do, and they're really versed in this defense. So I'm not going to get too worried about it yet. It is from time immemorial. It's vanilla, and they're just trying to see who's got the skills, and then once they start game planning, then they'll drill down on that, and that's you'll see something different. So. Not worry.
And I would say my biggest pet peeve, as a segue, is when something bad happens with the Vikings and I run into another Vikings fan and they basically shit all over my pissy mood is the best way I could put it as a college graduate. And after Daniel Carlson missed that second kick, I was over at the liquor store, and I said, ugh, great. And this customer said, it's the preseason. Don't get so upset. And I said, it's kicker. It doesn't matter if it's the preseason. It's a kicker. Sure. And he goes, well, they can just pick up Forbath, so what are you mad about? I'm like, well, oh, my God. If I can't have my anger, then I have nothing, is my point. But I wanted to just get your guys' take on the Carlson thing. Obviously, I'm prone to hyperbole, emotionally too, and I'm working on it. But it did. I was a little surprised by the response from the coaches. Saying NFL kickers don't miss 2 kicks in a row. Zimmer sending the message with the 2-point conversion. People saying that maybe he performed better when he was in a competition with Forbath because he had pressure on him, like the Case Keenum logic of, whatever. And so I have a feeling you guys are going to talk me down a little bit, and it was just one game, but I felt like obviously it was something worth.
Well, if I can go, I do have to toot my horn a little bit. I did say in my preview that is he going to relax now? Now a little pressure's off. Is Carlson going to relax in this game and miss a kick or two because the pressure's off after they sent Kai Forbath packing? And in fact, it seems like that kind of what happened. And I heard I heard a take from somewhere else that I thought made some sense, that when Blair Walsh went through his struggles, Zimmer babied him for a while. They all babied him, and he's taking the opposite tack here. I talked to Daniel Carlson during training camp, and he seemed a really confident kid, and he is aware of the pressure. And I know you can say this till you're blue in the face, but until you're faced with it. But so I said in my preview for this week, he's under more pressure now. It's ratcheted back up, and I think they successfully have done that, by saying this, and hopefully he feels that way and he gets down there and grinds a little bit. That's quite a statement from Prefer to say NFL kickers don't miss 2 kicks in a row. That is a shot across the bow from your position coach. So and it is true. I'm not saying they're going to do that, but Forbath is a phone call away, and we'll see what happens. But hopefully he responds, and I think he will. He seems to be a pretty confident kid. But that was I think it's more a reaction of the fans and everybody else as well, that after having gone through Blair Walsh, that the last thing you want to do is you have to spend a 5th rounder on a kicker, and then he wins the job, and then just go with 2 kicks right in the next game. It's not what you wanted to see, so hopefully they get it corrected.
I have a number of thoughts. So I have to criticize. The Vikings are receiving a ton of flack for the kicker situation, and deservedly so. They drafted a kicker. You should never draft a kicker.
Yes.
And I've talked about my thoughts on that before. But okay, you did it. Fine, whatever. It's a 5th round pick. 5th round picks aren't, the most valuable things in the world. They're not a fortune. Sucks to piss away value on the kicker, but whatever. I'm over it. And then you cut a kicker after 1 miss. So you cut Kai Forbath after 1 miss, right? You said, okay, 1 miss, competition is over.
Yeah.
And then you were immediately punished by 2 misses. You deserve to have that happen to you.
Yes.
You should not have done that.
Really quickly, just to touch on that, that's where my anger came from, because to me it was like, Forbath missed extra points, and I get that, but he also had probably the clutchest kick in team history, and was relatively automatic from the range where Carlson missed from 42 to.
I disagree. It was over before when they drafted him.
Well, then why'd you bring him into camp?
Pardon me?
Why'd you bring him into camp then?
Because you want to put that pressure on him. You want to see if the kid falls on his face or not. And unless he falls on his face, he's on the team. He's younger. He's got the stronger leg. The money's right. He was essentially done the minute they traded up to draft him.
I agree with you on that. I'm just saying they shouldn't have done it in the first place.
I feel that. I feel like if you're going to make a decision, though, why are you robbing your rookie kicker of that many reps then? That seems like a really bad value. Oh, and by the way, he just fell flat on his face. So your whole strategy has been completely botched.
Yeah.
He's losing his job to a guy that is not on the roster right now. He is losing the battle.
Let me respond to that as far as reps, just the reps part of it, because I talked to Prefer about this a number of years ago, and I asked him, why aren't you, when they have punters out there punting, and they always use this punting machine, they're not giving them reps. They go, why are you, you've got all this opportunity for this guy he's the only kicker in camp, let him kick, and they said, no, they don't want to wear out his leg. And to a certain degree, they only have so many reps that they're going to give these guys. Now, I know game reps are different, and that's what you're referring to, but ultimately, I think you need to – it's like golf. You've got to see these guys under pressure and see how they respond. And if they can't respond under pressure, then you got a problem.
And it's just such a question mark at such a vital position considering what they're trying to do this year. I think the risk-benefit ratio of getting some extra points versus and maybe kicking 57-yard field goals every once in a while versus the fact that it's a rookie, you're trying to go to the Super Bowl, he could implode. We've had a guy do that recently who had a big leg. It seemed like this draft had so many risks that I just don't understand.
I will agree with that. When you're putting together a Super Bowl team and all of a sudden you're drafting a rookie kicker, that's a little risky.
Ooh, someone agreed with me.
So go ahead, Luke. I'm sure you have more to say. Go on.
No, that's awesome insight. I think I'd wrap it up by saying on the other end of things. So here's the whole impetus behind don't ever draft kickers, and it's because kicking is pretty random, and the difference between a good kicker and a bad kicker often is overshadowed by the difference between a lucky kicker and an unlucky kicker. All this goes to say it doesn't really matter who your kicker is. So no, don't cut Daniel Carlson and pick up Kai Forbath. That'll make no difference.
Right. I agree with
It'll
that.
just make you look dumb. But
Yes.
dumber than you already look. And this has been proven, and this is where I'll bust out the fancy analytics math. It basically that kicking from game to game or from year to year is super unstable. So the fact that he missed in this preseason game doesn't really impact his chances of missing in the Tennessee game, and how he does in the Tennessee game won't affect how he does in the San Francisco game. Every kicker misses. Sometimes kickers miss twice in a row. This was probably a feature more of, random chance. It might have been a feature of him, maybe relaxing or changing his mindset now that he wasn't in a competition, and maybe
Just
that
a
affected
little
him.
bit. I think it's got to be, isn't it? Doesn't it?
It might have been that Mike Prefer tried to change something about his form, and maybe that didn't go well. You kind of when you're with a golf teacher and they try to change something about your swing, and you go to the driving range and you hit 40 left hooks. We might be in that. And maybe you have to back off that change or just let him work through it or whatever. It's probably going to be fine. Even if it isn't fine, that doesn't matter because luck has a lot more to do with it and just kind of chance. We judge kickers on these tiny samples of, they kicked 3 kicks in a game, and they have a decent chance of missing one over those 3 games. And, whether or not they are consistent doesn't necessarily reflect itself over the course of a season where you only kick 35 field goals.
It's amazing to me how much kicking is between the ears. It really is.
It's brutal though. I mean, you sit there for so long, and then a guy who's kind of an alien to the rest of the team. The whole game is on his shoulders, and you have to the pressure is ridiculous.
I talked to Ryan Longwell for the golf magazine that I edit, and I the comparisons they're rife with comparisons, and the fact that it's muscle memory, it's trying to do the same thing, it's trying to put yourself in the same position and mode every time. I mean, it doesn't matter, you have to make some adjustments for length and what have you, but it's essentially the same thing, striking that golf ball the same way every time, right in the heart of it, and blah 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 blah, and it really gets down to the mental aspect of it too. There's so many similarities, and pressure is what makes good golfers great. The ability to handle it, and they're probably trying to find out right now what this kid is made of, mentally. So I'm all for what they did. To put the pressure on. Mike Simmers, when he's mad, he's not an easy guy to look in the eyeballs. But
I did just see a quote too from Prefer that said, "I didn't scold him. I just told him he has to figure it out." So maybe he.
Oh God, they're backing off already.
There you go. I just read that 2 seconds ago.
Come on.
And I'm probably not. I'm obviously a pretty high-strung person. And I was on the golf team in high school, and we had our end-of-the-year tournament at Minnetonka Golf Course, which is we played at Hiawatha in Columbia all the time, so it's a really nice golf course. And
a little fresh out there, yeah.
There was newspaper reporters, and there was 50 people watching me tee off in the first hole. And the first swing, I took a divot, I swear to God, the size of you could resod your yard with it. And then I hit 3 balls into the parking lot. And I saw people what is this dude doing here? And I'm just ugh. I can't handle it. So I'm probably not the best person to point the dirty end of the stick. Is my story to wrap up the golf stuff. And we have about 7-8 minutes left. I wanted to get into the Titans game a little bit. We were going to talk about Slaughter and Simeon and maybe Chad Beebe and the wide receiver stuff. And I think the best way to look at the Titans game, obviously, is just the position battles and what you guys are looking for. I don't think we have enough time to get into the roster stuff and who's going to fit where, because that's a 3-hour conversation. But are there, certain guys who you think it's make or break? Do you think, to start off, do you think Boone, I know, Joe, you touched on this in your preview article, that, Boone obviously has been getting the ball ahead of Rock Thomas, and that he seems to be the guy that's in the lead. Do you think that there's any chance that'll change?
I don't know. I don't think so. Not at this point. Unless he, falls on his face. But he came out of that game a little injured. It looked really bad. Just after having another good showing. But I really think they like what they have in him, and maybe they roster him and trade him to a running back desperate team. But there aren't too many of those. But no, I think he's gonna make the roster and win that position in my mind.
Yeah, he's winning.
Else?
It's like when you enter the fourth quarter up 10, you're probably going to win. It's not locked up yet, but you're winning pretty handily.
Right.
What do you guys, Luke? What do you think about the backup quarterback battle? Do you think that they're going to bring 3 QBs into the season with all these?
Yeah,
5
I think
safeties, 100
I think they will. I think they can afford to bring in, just because they don't have I don't think they have 6 wide receivers that are undeniably rosterable like they have in years past. I don't think they've kept 10 linemen in years past. I don't think they have 10 linemen that are good enough. So I think they can afford to keep 3 quarterbacks. But right now, in terms of the backup job, I think Sloter's outplayed Simeon, but Simeon may have been dealing with more complex concepts or different reads, or they might have given him more. He might have been better on the whiteboard. There might just be things going on behind the scenes with Simeon that cause him to look better to the coaches, and we just don't see that necessarily on the field from our angle. We don't see the conversations that they're having and stuff. So that might be why they're still doubling down on Simeon, even though Sloter has clearly outplayed him. But I think Sloter's opened the window, right? He could totally ball out again, and Simeon could fall apart again, and then maybe he's going to be the backup quarterback, and that would be he's got an opportunity.
Who do you think starts at quarterback?
Teddy.
Teddy? He's back. I was going to bring that up.
That's Teddy Bridgewater's music. No, and I think wide receiver is the most interesting battle. I think you've got 5 guys competing over 2 or 3 spots, and really whoever has the best game gets it. Honestly, you have BB, Zylstra, Tavares King, Coley. Any of these guys can be cut or make the roster.
Yeah, Coley's I think is done, right? I mean,
he might not play because
if they're inactive, that really hurts.
Practice this week, and they generally don't play if you miss practice. They may want to. He may sit.
Okay.
Maybe.
So as of tonight, if I put a gun to your head, which is a very strong possibility at some point, what 5 receivers make the team behind Diggs, Thielen, Treadwell? There's 2 spots.
2 spots. I'm going to go with Zylstra. I think Zylstra will have a good game and then earn the spot. And I think nobody else will step up, and it'll go by default to Tavares King, and we'll be sad about it.
Oh, really?
I'm going to say Zylstra and BB because Marcus Sherrell's is nursing a hamstring, and BB's got some punt return ability in him too. So
if BB plays, definitely could be BB. Could be Zylstra and BB.
You think the Patriots might snipe some of our receivers if we let them go?
I think Cordell Patterson might be wide receiver 1 over there right now.
Yeah, that's if he turns into something, this show is over.
That'd be so disappointing. We couldn't make it work. Oakland couldn't make it work, and then the Patriots figure out what to do with
the
them.
Randy Moss trajectory, kind of, but without the success here.
If he breaks Randy Moss's record, then the show is over.
My favorite shirt. That's my This is my favorite to end the show with a story of all time that explains a certain sect of Vikings fans. I loved Randy Moss to a point where I literally broke my hand when he got traded in 2004 when I was in college. And after he broke the record, I bought a shirt that had him celebrating the touchdown, and it said Randy Moss, NFL record, most touchdowns in a season, 23. It was a huge shirt, and I'm a relatively big guy, and I got in the elevator at work, and a guy from a different floor got on because I was going down to the cafeteria, and he goes, "Randy Moss, huh? He hasn't done shit since he left here. He sucks." And I go, "Read the shirt!" Ugh. It is telling you the exact opposite, you idiot.
You have to be able to read in college? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. But, yeah, I wanted to thank our sponsors again, Pro Football Focus. If you're looking for help with your fantasy football team, I know a lot of people have drafts still coming up this week and upcoming weekend. They have some really great stuff in regards to fantasy grades that might help you win your league. And also, Revitalite is awesome if you, like I used to do. I used to take, in the first 2 years, my boss said, "You've taken like 12 vacation days and they're all Mondays after the Vikings lose." And I was like, "Oh, well." So that'll help you maybe keep your job. But did you guys have anything that I know we're going to be doing the game chat tomorrow, which has been fun. And Joe's doing his wrap-up article. I am going to hopefully be able to do some box score stuff with some new software that we have that'll also have like live, like if you're at work and you want to follow the game and the live score and who has the ball and what the last play was, that should be on both sites, Purple PTSD and Vikings territory. But Luke, I wasn't sure if you had anything you wanted to plug.
You can check out my Cornelius Edison piece. I think it's not mine, but you should check out Nick Olson's Vikings territory piece on the offensive line in general, especially if you're concerned about it. He makes a really, really strong case that everything is going to be okay. I'm also going to do a final roster prediction. I did one before camp. I did one at the end of my stay at camp after watching them practice, but before any preseason games. And I'm going to do another one right before this final game here. So I'll probably actually post that either tonight or tomorrow morning, but by the time you listen to this, it'll definitely be out on my Twitter account, so keep an eye out for that.
And
Joe, you should read Nick Olson's piece. Everything's going to be okay, brother.
I told you I don't want people to take away my anger because it's all I got. Yeah. So I don't read.
You can still be mad at the kicker thing, though.
Oh, okay. Well, I got that going for me.
Everybody can be mad at the kicker thing. They botched that one.
And that's a good way for me to bring up. I'm doing my season record prediction either tomorrow or Friday. I did a couple of predictions yesterday that I thought were interesting. The one being that the Vikings defense is going to average 14 points or less allowed this season. But yeah, Joe, I don't know if you wanted to plug your stuff too.
No, we're good. You got it. I got the game wrap coming up. I had to preview just today, yes. Yeah. And then we'll be diving into some new stuff next week and figure out what's happening, what's going on. So,
yeah.
I had someone text me today and said PTSD is killing it with all their Vikings content. So we'll just keep rolling with it.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm a hyperbolic person, but between the two sites, I honestly don't think anybody has the coverage that we do. It's like a dream come true. It's crazy. So check out PTSD especially. We added a couple new writers this week. We're going to be doing a lot more content, like radio show type content, starting maybe next week or the week after. But follow us on social media too, at Facebook or Twitter, and check us out next week, where we'll be previewing the first game of the season. I'm kind of a little nervous about it, if you can't tell. So. Thanks for listening, and this has been the Purple Journal Podcast. Skol.